My guest today was born in Lahore and moved to India after partition. He studied economics at St. Stephen's and went on to work in the tea gardens. Over the years, he worked with a number of companies and then eventually started his trading business in the 1970s. Today, he's not only working in the area of business, and that too international trade, he's also an author of a number of books. Welcome, Ashok Sani.
Thank you very much.
In 1976, many people viewed imports as something that was, a waste of Indian foreign exchange, and one must promote exports rather than import. But you went into the import field. Is it that you could see an opportunity at that time where others perhaps had not looked?
Vikram, we're going back to a time when self-reliance was understood in a different context, where the world wasn't as global as it is today, where if you depended on somebody else to help you out, then you were in trouble, because that somebody else could decide to walk away, and then you wouldn't know what to do. Prakash Tandon, who was chairman of STC, who was chairman of the Punjab National Bank and Hindustan Lever, was my tenant here. And I remember talking with him, and he said, we need a philosophy, and the philosophy is export or perish. And I said, look, Mr. Tandon, I understand the need for export, but I think you have to understand that there is in economics a thing called the law of comparative advantage. Each one of us is good at something. Okay? So if I produce something that has value and I can do it better, then there's no problem, or there should be no problem in you buying that from me, and in return I would buy from you what you can do better. So he said, well, that's all fine, but I still say export or perish. Now, that was 1976 or 77. Things have changed since then, of course. And yes, we went into the import field for a different reason. Yes, opportunities, sure, but also the fact that it's far easier to import than it is to export. Because as far as import is concerned, all you need to know is your own market, the demand in your market, and therefore you need to be able to source the material required to meet the demand in your own market. Whereas to go out and look for export means you have to spend time and money and have an understanding of that country and their systems and what they need. Now that is a lot of effort, it's a lot of time. Yes, it can be and is business which is done very well for lots of people. Japan is an importer of almost everything short of rice and water. So people have done wonders selling to Japan. But Japanese imports are controlled by Japanese companies, not foreigners wanting to sell into Japan. You won't sell into Japan unless you sell to a Japanese trading company.
During your recent book launch, As Times Go By, you were described as a person who can sell sand to the Arabs and ice to the Eskimos. So it's a marketing trait that you have, which has helped you over the years. But you never studied marketing. You actually studied economics in university.
I don't think, unless you're talking sciences, I don't think that studying marketing or studying history or economics or whatever really does very much more than give you a certain perspective on life and the world. No, I didn't study marketing. And I'll tell you what made me feel that this was something that I would do well in. I went into a fishing venture after I left my last job, which was with the DCM. And That wasn't a great success simply because enough homework hadn't been done. And I went back and joined another company for a short period of time. And that gave me an opportunity to go abroad, chasing a contract which was turning infructuous. It didn't succeed. I went to the United States, I went to Mexico, and I came back. And something told me that this is what I should be doing. I don't know why. There are plenty of extroverts, there are plenty of people who can talk. I mean, that's no great shakes. But I just felt that I'm able to convince people. Of course, I need to first be convinced in the product that I'm trying to sell. And then I went around and we started this business of international trading, and well, the last 30 years we've been doing this. And
how badly has the economic crisis hit you? Most trading companies around the world are feeling the pinch because markets are changing, the dynamics are changing, and profitability is being hit. How do you see it?
You see, demand has certainly been hit everywhere, including the two major consumers in the world, and that is the United States of America, who with only a 250, 300 million population are the biggest guzzlers in the world, and the Chinese. The two, Japan has literally been out of this whole circuit for the last 15, 20 years. They still haven't got out of it. I think personally that the world is, I think, very nearly out of the woods. I still say another year. The people talk of, I don't know, 6 months or more. There are the government officials from top down who talk of 7% and then 6.5% and then 6%. And I've always maintained we'll be no more than about somewhere 5.5. But really speaking, I don't think that matters, because as far as my business is concerned, whether we in India grow at 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 doesn't have an awful lot of impact on my business, because we're trading internationally. And therefore, for me, growth in South America and growth in China is what really picks things up. And China has shown signs of revival, so has Europe, and so has the United States. So I think, given another 1 year, we should be back where we were.
What about newer markets? Markets that have not been explored by Indians in the past, considered by some as off the beaten track, like Brazil or any of the Latin American countries. Do you think there is potential there that Indian companies need to tap into?
See, I think, like I said earlier, the export is a far more difficult thing to do than import. Simply because you have to go find a market. Time consuming, money consuming, big pockets are needed. You can't just fly out to Brazil and land there and sell a product and come away. It won't work that way. So, South America today, I don't think anybody has doubts that we need to be in South America. It is a resurgent, if I may use the word South America as one, resurgent economy. Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, Chile. We have businesses here in these countries ourselves. We supply materials to the steel industry, to the refractory industry, materials that we purchase out of China and then sell to South America. It's easier now in South America because lots of people in the last, let's say, 8 or 10 years, lots of companies have set up their own facilities there. Indian companies who have gone and set up manufacturing facilities or joined hands with local entrepreneurs to set up facilities. But where we need to really do something, and I think we're rather left behind because the Chinese have swamped the area, is Africa. Perhaps the richest country in the world in terms of natural resources.
So where are the specific business opportunities you see?
We don't produce anything. We are a pure trading company. So we're always on the lookout for opportunities of what we can buy where and sell where. You can have big highfalutin names for it, but that's all the business is. That's all the import, export, international trading amounts to. You find a product and you find a market for the product. I was lucky in the sense that when I got into the business and looked at China for sourcing, the advantage with me then, and perhaps even now, but for how much longer I don't know, is that I speak the English language, like lots of us do, and the Chinese don't. The best Chinese speaker of the English language is terrible, and you never know what he's understood when you talk to him. So their biggest problem is their inability to market the goods they make because of their inability to express themselves clearly to the customer. So a big part of the success, that whatever success I have achieved, I attribute to the fact that I saw this opportunity. I used my ability with the language to place Chinese goods around the world. We've worked in specific fields, and it's worked out well. But China, we now know, is concentrating on teaching children how to speak English, starting from kindergarten or lower classes. So in about 20, let's say 20, 30 years' time, you will have a large Chinese population of reasonably well-speaking people who know the language and will then not need companies like me or people like me to go market the goods.
Well, it's interesting to know that English, the language, actually helped you in your business, but it's also helping you in other ways. You are now writing. You've written a number of books in the last few years, and you continue to look at the other side of life, the philosophical side of life. I want to talk about that in great detail, but first we need to take a short break. We'll be back in just a moment.
That's why no one covers India quite like we do. Sri Lankan Airlines, you're our world.
Crown Plaza, Surya, New Delhi, the place to meet.
Kuwait Airways, wings of comfort, day and night. A beautiful experience, lip-smacking meals, exotic destinations, a world of comfort. Kuwait Airways, let's fly together.
Welcome back. My guest today is Ashok Sani. Before we went for the break, we talked about how the English language helped you in doing business. It's also helped you in other ways. You have started writing in the last few years, and you've written a number of books, the last being As Time Goes By. It looks at the philosophical side of life. What made you actually go into writing poetry?
I've always enjoyed poetry. In college, Urdu was one of my subjects, and I studied Urdu in Lahore. Then I moved here through school and college. I read, Urdu poets like Ghalib and Mir and Zafar, and then also English poetry. And I think the influence of my grandfather and two uncles of mine who came back from Cambridge, and this is going back 60, 70 years, left an imprint. I liked the language. I studied the language. I read some poetry, like all of us did. I was fired up by Charge of the Light Brigade and stuff like that. I started writing in Urdu, and then it just flowed. I mean, I started in December 2006, and by middle of 2007, I'd written a fair amount in Urdu, and frankly speaking, I'd almost forgotten the language. I'd almost forgotten the script. I didn't know which way to start, but it just came, and I continued. And as I have 2 books in Urdu, which hopefully will be released in November this year. And in the middle of 2007, friends of mine who don't read or don't understand the Urdu language saying, look, hey, why don't you try writing in English? So I started, and it then became an absolute passion with me, and I would write at 3 in the morning and 5 in the evening and midnight, anytime I could, and it didn't need me to sit and think. I mean, I sat outside with my morning cup of tea, and I saw a sparrow jump around on the lawn, and I always carry a pen and a piece of paper, and I wrote the poem called Sparrow, which has been well reviewed in England. So,
is that your favorite?
The Sparrow? Vikram, I've written many. I've written now 5 books, and I think close to maybe 600-800 poems in English. Difficult to pick, and again,